Hey, welcome everybody. No notice at all. Those who are here, thank you for joining. When you do, in the future, in the past, or otherwise, whatever. All right. Get some adjustments on my. And I'll send out an invite. So I'll get that done here. I don't have any hold music, so forgive me. I could always go back to Shamalama, Shamalama, Lama, Ding Dong. Hey, hey. Oh, 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 back into my smile. Hey, hey. I'm gonna get this on Twitter. Do do do. Oh, how do I get this on Twitter again? All right. That's how. Hang on. So, just so I keep this kind of flowing here for future purposes, I'm going to give some folks time to join. There's a lot going on in the world. I've been away from my channel for the most part for a couple weeks, trying to do some personal things and just get relocated and things like that. All right, getting that out there. Okay. All right, so I put it out on Twitter also. Oh. Okay. Get a screen share going here. Hang on, folks. I'm having some issues with my All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Susan. Let's see here. I'm having trouble with my screen share. Hang on. Guys, I had to do a lot of things to get my laptop all squared away. Oh, crap. All right. This may drop out for a second, but like the screen's going to go black just for about a minute, okay? And I will be right back. So don't worry, guys. I'll be back, and if not, then I'll restart this whole thing, okay? But this will just take a second. All right, back. Sorry about that. So, just to give you an idea what's been going on, I had to do a pretty significant relocation, and then I'm also had to do a total like wiping of my operating system and a total restart from scratch. A lot of things going on, and just trying to adjust to a different situation and things like that. So, I appreciate your patience with the channel and all the support and everybody returning here. Thank you very much. I know it's kind of hard to keep an audience engaged for a while, especially if you have large gaps and doing streams and things like that. So I do appreciate you joining again, and thank you. Because I think right now there's a lot of things going on right now, and quite frankly I've wanted to chime in on a lot of it, but it's just I've had so many things going on to keep me busy. All right, here we go. So let me attempt this screen share again, and hopefully it works this time. All right, that's the Twitter. Okay, now I just have to go back into my profile and we can get this going. Thank you again for joining. Thanks for the patience on my technical hiccups today. All right. So I want to start off real quick by saying that, like, this thing that's going on in the world right now, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I probably said that earlier, but those of you joining, you didn't hear that part. Um, who can call themselves an expert except for somebody who's there on the ground? And I think if you contextualize what's happening in Ukraine right now relative to things that go on in the United States, I would say what we're experiencing right now is kind of happening globally. A lot of people are confused about things that are going on in their own countries. Like here in America, if you haven't been to the Northwest, for example, it might be a little bit challenging to understand the world the way that I do. Just as if I've never been to the South, or if I've never been to the East Coast, or if I've never, been close to those environments, it would be challenging for me to understand the perspective of people in those areas also. And I think what's helped me, I guess, understand what's going on is, like, right now, since I would say about last year, in the summertime, our country's been in a pretty unstable state. We've had lots of these riots, protests that transition into just riots and destruction. Um, a lot of posturing on social issues that, when you get past the deception of that, meaning to say that a lot of people are hiding behind social justice issues as a premise through which to basically just destabilize America. And I think that what we need to start doing right now as Americans is to really stop thinking as much about left versus right, red versus blue, and really just get back down to common sense basics of, unpackaging the fiction and the propaganda. We all know we get lied to. We all know that the mainstream media and those in charge of promoting those messages are almost always lying to us or trying to stoke us into war. They've been trying to start a war with Russia, whether it's a cyber war or otherwise. They've been trying aggressively to get us into war for a number of years. Even before, well, I would say leading into the Trump presidency, and even just before, you could see people that were beating the drum and trying to blame Russia for a lot of things. Now, I've been pretty open with my audience that I have a pretty strong affection for the Russian culture. It's just something that I've developed over time. But I also need you to understand that I have, like, a good friend of mine that I spent, a number of years partnering with on work projects, has Ukrainian lineage. And so I never lose that focus, like about, when I'm trying to examine an issue, just because I have a better understanding maybe than the average American of the way that Russians understand world politics. If you don't enter into somebody else's perspective, it's challenging to get it right. And so I feel like, me personally, like I have an above average ability to decrypt things that are going on within the propaganda and news media cycle here in America, based on a lot of factors, not just my research, but all kinds of other things, right? Where I just am kind of in the know, you could say, about the way that the propaganda machine works and what makes it a reality and how it gets funded. Literally, the ecosystem of, where the crisis actors come from, their partnerships with the Department of Justice, the national security, the national security infrastructure via the National Defense Authorization Act, called the NDA, and how that gave powers and expanded powers during the Obama administration to the Department of Energy and the State Department to perform propaganda on US soil in order to fool foreign audiences. That was kind of an unprecedented move with that NDA, the National Defense Authorization Act. I believe it was around 2012 or 2013 is when that happened. And that's also connected to what's called the Smith-Mundt Act. And again, what these things do is they expand the powers of agent or groups like the Department of Energy and the State Department. But specifically in 2012, my understanding is that they expanded that power to the Department of Energy. Now, folks, everything that you're seeing today, as far as I can tell, is about energy. Yes, it's about influence, but what is influence? I mean, more specifically, how is influence achieved? Influence is achieved through energy interests globally. Russia, if I'm not mistaken, I think I've been reading, the number is figuring around like about 40% of Western interests are vested in getting energy from Russia. This is what makes this whole thing going on right now such insanity. Now, the reason I'm putting this up here, guys, I put, when the global elite and power players like Soros and Clinton Foundation line up to support anything, there must be a piece of the narrative missing. You folks might notice that Clinton Global Initiative just announced today, I believe, or in the last couple days, that it's their intention to restart the Clinton Global Initiative, the CGI, to get it going again to face today's unique challenges. That's pretty telling, folks, because what's going on right now, you're seeing these same people stoking instability in the region, and then they're going to be conveniently there to offer charitable services to all of the displaced refugees and make sure that a whole flood of them can come to America immediately and be taken in by guess who. Do you kind of see how this system works now? Create instability. The people that have it created by them blame the wrong people for what's happening to them quite frequently. And then the ones who conveniently swoop in to save the refugees in that situation are going to be who? The CGI. Something happens in Haiti, who sweeps in to help them? CGI. Then what happens after they receive this help? Those who are supposed to receive the help said, we didn't get the help that we asked for. I'm glad that the cameras came and they showed you a few examples of some really shiny, happy people out here. But by and large, we got looted and robbed. All right. Then those who are willing to loot and rob their fellow people, or who are just ignorant of the thing, will get brought into America, fast ticket in. This creates a whole chaos environment through which to bring a flood of people in. They'll do this place after place after place after place. They've been doing it. Okay. Now, again, guys, I historically come from pretty, um, moderately liberal roots. Okay. From my, just brought in from my family. I have my own opinions on things, and I've established my own opinions pretty clearly on these types of topics. Okay. But what I'm telling you is liberalism has become a mask of people that really are genuinely promoting this pro-war, pro-fascist agenda, masquerading themselves as anti-fascists. Antifa is a great example. It's just an extension of Nazism. The first thing they do is go, boo, and they look crazy and weird, and they say, we're anti-fascist, and if you don't agree with us, you're fascist. Well, we all know that that's nonsense, because their method is fascist. So on its face, you know right away that they're, watch their behaviors, and you'll see that Antifa exhibits fascist behavior. Sorry, I'm not trying to. Yeah, sorry guys, that was completely not intentional here. But yes, fascist, like the Sieg Heil. Sorry guys, again, not there for that for purpose to be cheeky or anything like that. But yes, they're actually fascist. A lot of their symbols, like the raised fist, are pro-communist to their own admission, right? And so when you're looking at the Ukraine image and everything like that, you're going to see this common theme of the raised fist, just like Black Lives Matter. They're using the symbol over and over again of the raised fist. Okay. Again, and then I'm observing this frequently, guys, that when there's faux movements to support a position that a lot of people here might be inclined to, like, let me give you an example. Like if you supported the trucker convoy, then you must know that if we're going to plan something like the trucker convoy here in America, let alone anywhere else, that the opposition who's in control of the media cycle will knock down your organic leader. If there's somebody out there that's really trying to get this going, they'll be cut off access from those people that really they could get this thing organized with. Electronically, they'll find a way to reroute them. They'll find a way to make their to where they can't get the funders, they can't get the emails out, they can't get the technology things working. It'll be the cyber attack on those people. And then once the idea has been lifted from the person, the people or groups that are actually going to do it, then there's a false attribution of, your idea of doing a trucker convoy in the United States or something like that will then be taken over by your opposition who will be out in front of the cameras. And I promise you, they're going to do something that's going to rope a lot of the people that are trying to support this protest into an information trap, into a financial trap, into making it to where when you're trying to defend your values, defend yourself, defend your fellow citizens, that you wind up punished, that you wind up feeling like, why did I even try? That's the goal. All right. And so I'm not discouraging people. I thought what they did there was pretty cool out there in Canada. But I would caution you that if you're going to join something like that, you're going to really want to know exactly who plans it, coordinates it, and make sure that it's if there's any question about the organic origins of that movement, you're going to want to dig deeper and find out more. Okay, anything in America, especially. All right. So I've often talked about on this channel the use of crisis actors and various different people to fictionalize events using the Smith-Mundt Act and the National Defense Authorization Act. Excuse me. Need some coffee. Hang on. All right. Here in the United States. And you must know that if they can do that effectively here in the United States, we all agree. We have a media cycle that sometimes promotes stories. I think most people who are in this channel will agree. Whether you like me or not, you got to know the news media cycle oftentimes syndicates fake news stories that we all kind of go like, no, that didn't happen. But how do they make it look realistic to everybody who's like investigating or reporting and who would need to have something they can latch onto? All right. That's where you get into the whole thing involving the use of, well, the technology hacks, the backdoor routes to make it where, yeah, records can be populated. Things can look realistic to a person who's doing a digital forensics investigation. You're looking for signs. Does that person really exist? Do they really live there? Did that neighborhood really have those people? Okay, they're going to populate records that makes it look like somebody actually did. I'm not trying to get into any specific situations, guys. I'm just telling you, like, if you're purely looking on the internet, that's what they figure 95% of you are going to do. And that if they just cover, giving like a nice, convenient digital forensic trail within the internet for you all to latch onto and think that you've got it figured out, okay, most of you won't take that extra time, or you don't have the resources, or you just simply know that beyond that, to prove that what you're seeing in the digital forensics is fake. This is where we're getting into the next phase of everything and what needs to happen. Because deciphering the fakery and its origins and who's doing it will be vital to sort of like not only figuring out what's going on in here in this country, but what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and Belarus. All right. Now, the reason I said the Smith-Mundt Act and the Department of Energy and all that is because you need to understand that energy interests in America have their own agenda, and it's global. And a lot of it revolves around controlling the nuclear waste and nuclear materials, both for weapons and for procurement of energy. And here in the United States, if you do any amount of research, you're going to know that any attempts to store nuclear waste beyond its current places of storage are highly unfavorable, always politically damning, and no one ever wants them to happen. Hence, America has a problem where they're generating quite a bit of nuclear waste. They already have a lot of spent nuclear waste. How do they convert that nuclear waste into something that is, quote, safer or safe, if it's even possible? That's the process called vitrification, where they take the spent nuclear waste and convert it into what are called glassified rods, and those glassified uranium rods are allegedly safe to transport after that and take to another location and bury deep, 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 deep underground. In America, that place was the Yucca Mountain Repository. Here, guys, I don't have to I can say like Yucca Mountain. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a quick lesson, guys. I'm just trying to help you decipher a little bit of truth from fiction. Like, why is the media cycle so like, those bad Russians, they're horrible, let's defend Ukraine. And you're like, you guys, like, I don't think you really care that much. You see what I'm saying? I'm not, guys, forget your position. Like, forget that you can't forget that I've told you guys, like, I respect the Russian culture and what they know about energetics and what they know about some pretty sophisticated concepts that are more hidden sciences that in Western nations in America they keep us from. And I just see that the Russians have a more open relationship with their society, and they seem to want to share their knowledge with others and encourage it. And I think by and large, even at some of the higher levels, that you really do have a nation there that was trying to keep the peace. Now, why would they just sort of like go into the Ukraine if you don't know all the pieces and you haven't like really understood that dynamic? It would seem just like some aggressive action by some big large country into some smaller country, and it's like they're defending themselves. That's exactly what Zelensky, a crisis actor and a comedian who starred in romantic comedies and provided the voice of a animated dog called no an animated bear named Paddington for the foreign language version of the film Paddington Bear. That's your president of the Ukraine. He is an actor. So when you see all of these things where he's like going, we must defend our people, we have to do this, I mean, look at the conviction, look at the way he's working the camera angles, look how theatric everything Zelensky is doing. Just use your critical eye. And then remember, guys, here in America, we have a president that is sabotaging our country from the ground up, from within, through intentional incompetency, just basically letting things happen, letting it go, and everything else like that. Then conveniently always going like, but Russia's hacking us. It's a guys, we know the technique. Okay, so those of us who have become sharp enough to figure out how it's working here in the US and how many times they've done it when it wasn't the Russians, by the way. Again, guys, I'm not telling you that what the Russians are doing right now is right or wrong. I'm asking you to just like zoom out a little bit and look at the energy component from it and the crisis actor Hollywood component to what's going on over there, because there's parallels. The same type of like crisis acting nonsense that you see here where they go like, I'm a victim, things are happening to me, you must defend me. That's what Zelensky's doing. Okay, it's an act. He wants the chaos in that country, he's creating it. Him and a bunch of the other ones that are corrupt. Keep in mind, guys, Biden, and I forget the exact titles here, guys, but you've probably heard the recording of Biden on the phone with the Ukrainian president, like right around the time that Trump was about to take over as president, and he's basically doing quid pro quo, excuse me, with uh, the World Bank funds, saying, well, I'll get you that World Bank loan that you guys need, that billions, however many billions of dollars, but we really need you to get rid of that lead attorney in your country and swap him out for somebody who's a little bit more favorable to American interests. And so, if you know what I'm talking about here, those American interests, guys, that's energy interests, and they're really not American. They're multinational nuclear companies. Multinational nuclear companies are all basically in a scramble to confuse us, all of us. I don't care if you live in the Ukraine and you're one of them and you don't know why it's happening. If you live in Russia and you don't know why it's happening. If you live in America or Europe and you don't know why it's happening. It is all about energy dominance. And the people that are behind nuclear, hate to say it, guys, are just a specific kind of evil that you just don't know until you've been immersed in their culture. They have a way of looking at the world. Nuclear, once you get to certain high levels, it's a little bit just like certain high levels within. Honestly, guys, I'm not going to try to get too weird here, but there is a lot of mysticism and a lot of perspective of a lack of value of human life, perceiving individuals as just energy sources, not unlike the Matrix views, everybody as an individual bioelectric battery. When you really zoom out, you have that kind of perspective with those people in the nuclear industry. They get colder and colder and less human and more interested in selling their perspective, which is a false one of safety, upon the rest of the world. This is something that we've known through thousands of years of experimentation with these materials. This nuclear is not new. If you really study back, and this is something that the Russians actually have, like Valery Uvarov, his research talks a lot about ancient history and lots, like the real ancient aliens, that when you take away all of the posturing and things like that, yeah, they have the real deal over there. They've done the real research and can actually give you like lots of the history if you're willing to listen to it. That's the best thing that I can tell you. Um, and and so nuclear disasters and nuclear fallout from previous disasters, it's like this cocktail of how to destroy a lot of different people has been created before. It's not new. You can debate that part, guys. Again, this is going to be one of those things where you either believe it or you don't, or you think it's like a look, guys, I don't believe anything 100%, but I do think that we've experienced more than one major nuclear disaster, and it just wasn't done through the standard like nuclear stacks like we see today. It was done using more ancient forms of technology. Um, but I do think that we've had in our culture a bit of a de-evolution. If you're really to study ancient history and find out like why were the pyramids there, why do these things seem a little bit more sophisticated, and we assume that they were done through primitive means. Well, it could just be, guys, that we were actually quite sophisticated as a global society, and that we've actually sort of kind of devolved a little bit, as opposed to evolved. And then we had deluges, a lot of floods, a lot of disasters that sort of washed away the evidence of the history of our technology advances, that it pre-existed this current culture. So now we're under this illusion that we're experiencing all these advancements, like it's never been better than this. How do you know? How do you know that we didn't have all of these things figured out in a much better way that was way more harmonious with nature before, and then somebody had the idea to do something equally inane, and there was a huge nuclear fallout? Sorry, guys, to get too off the whatever, when it comes to the history aspect. I'm just helping you understand, like, we've made these mistakes before in history. People have thought to do these things. If you don't accept that, that's fine. But it's a cultural perspective that you're missing out on, if you don't get that others see it that way and that they've done more research than Western countries. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of did figure that out. And that's when I understood that quite a few people there that are at a very high level and very intelligent, the last thing they want really is a nuclear war. We've just put ourselves into a position right now where um, if you don't individually have control over the resources involving nuclear energy, you're at a disadvantage as a global power. I don't like any of it. I wish there was none of it. I wish we weren't relying on nuclear energy anywhere, any place, anytime. That's my personal perspective on it. And that's in contradiction to the Russian perspective overall, who does actually have a lot of their control over energy using nuclear means, as well as gas pipelines and all kinds of other things, delivering, fossil fuels and things like that. I mean, a lot of the production is done in Russia, and a lot of the Western nations rely upon it. So these ideas of like disconnecting them from SWIFT and doing all these things, guys, watch how the media cycle is really popularizing Ukraine as this defenseless nation, and that NATO must rush in to, no pun intended, but that NATO must go in to defend, using American soldiers as well as other, soldiers from other nations. Okay. when NATO is just a aspiring member. They're not a member, or rather, Ukraine is not a member of NATO. NATO's mission initially was basically to prevent spread of Soviet Union's power, you know, during the Cold War. That's when they were a communist nation. That's when they supported communism. NATO's mission was at that time to prevent the spread of the Soviet Union and communism. Now, Chernobyl, if many people would argue, those unfamiliar. Oh, sorry, guys. So, yeah, just in case you didn't know, Yucca Mountain is a repository in America that we were supposed to store a lot of nuclear waste in. It just never happened. And so the project got shut down, but there is bored underground, like deep, 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 tons and tons of tunnels that leads to an underground storage facility of nuclear materials. And then you got So one of the things I do is I kind of follow this channel called Cryosan, mostly because they're just guys that know a lot about energy concepts. They know about electricity and more esoteric things you can do with it, like making guns with electricity, weapons with it. I'm always trying to, because I know there's a lot of people who have experienced symptoms from it. I'm always trying to learn more about like those types of things. And so Cryosan's channel really does validate a lot of those concerns. They're in the Pripyat area, and that's where there was the Chernobyl disaster zone was. And so those of you who've played some of the Call of Duty Modern Warfare games, you can actually play a 3D first person shooter environment of that Chernobyl map. There's a way to do it within that video game. And so when I saw these guys actually going through these areas, I was actually pretty surprised at how accurate the video game was, because I had memories of it. It's been years since I played it, probably like, I don't know, several years since I played any of those games. But when I was playing Modern Warfare, I specifically remember there being a map. I can't remember which one. It's one, two, or three. And there was a map of this whole area, Pripyat and the Chernobyl area. And so what these guys do is they kind of investigate areas that are allegedly toxic. They bring Geiger counters. They go in, they actually scuba dive and go underwater into some of the old Chernobyl nuclear tanks and underground facilities and show you video footage of them sneaking in. I don't know I mean, they're still posting clips right now, and they're not talking about any of the conflict that's going on over there. So I don't know how old that footage is and how long it takes them to edit and put it online. But what really got me thinking about this was in watching Cryosan's channel and seeing these locals down there. They actually go to the modern Chernobyl. So Chernobyl basically in the 80s created this big meltdown, and it basically put a huge it tarnished the nuclear industry as a whole. It made everybody go like, well, if I wasn't worried about nuclear before, I sure as hell am now. The nuclear clouds spread everywhere. I mean, really, I don't think there's any way that any place in the world wasn't affected by some degree of the fallout from Chernobyl. We all share this biosphere, or whatever you want to call it, that we live in here. I mean, this is um, we're kind of in a shell here of an ionosphere if you think about it. So everything that's put out, I mean, I guess you could call that the same as the karma cycle when it's all said and done. Everything you put out energetically returns. Well, everything that goes into the atmosphere is eventually going to find its way into this cycle of ionospheric, energy and rotation. There's just no avoiding it. And so I think what's going on right now, guys, if you're going to be pragmatic about viewing what's going on right now, if I'm not mistaken, please, if I misquoted, tell me. I believe that there's about 11 nuclear stations right now that are generating power within that region of Ukraine. That's 11 places right now. And I want you to think about this, guys. There's a war going on, and there's nuclear power pretty much all over the place in this relatively small country that shares a border with Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. Can you imagine, like, I mean, what is there even a situation like that anywhere in America? I mean, it would almost be like we had two separate conflicts involving a nuclear reactor that was on the border of Canada and Mexico simultaneously. Try to put that in context with, say that was happening, and on top of it, you had Antifa, BLM type riots, destabilization of those areas going on simultaneously, crisis actors, a media cycle making up news stories that are total fiction about why it's all happening to confuse people into getting angry about the wrong people or the wrong place or the wrong time, like they always do. Can you imagine, guys? Just try to contextualize this type of event here, and just think about and put it in the context of America having the degree of sophistication that I think most of you do have here, and just apply that to the Ukraine and think about how the media will misreport things going on here to the rest of the world, involving a lot of the riots and protests and things that go on. They're going to do it over there, and they're going to make the wrong people look like the victims. Now, when I tell you that, let me make this clear. The people, the actual citizens, are nearly all victims. 99% of the Ukrainians are just victims of a conflict, and I absolutely empathize with them. I don't want any of this to happen. I don't want any of these people to be displaced or things to happen to their family. But you have to separate that argument from what's going on between the governments. And then after you get past the government, then you've got the whole thing involving, what are their motivations for getting this going? Well, we all know they want the war machine for a lot of reasons. Okay. They can just keep making all these things up, provide all this different footage. And guys, I mean, if you watch different media stations, and I would really encourage you to expose yourself to media that comes from a multitude of perspectives, not just Western nations. It doesn't mean you have to go to like Al Jazeera and get the news per se. Gravitas that has more of a like an Indian combined with America, like Indian and an Indian American or Indian European, like people from the country of India. They've had some pretty good reporting on it too. And again, I would just say, like, if you're going to take a position on this and retweet and think that you have like a valid perspective on it, learn what different countries are thinking about this, like get different governments, even not just like US is always going to be a big mismatch of just like global energy interests trying to steer us as a world leader into whatever we don't belong into as a distraction away from what they're doing with mostly nuclear. All right, here's where I started to have an aha moment the other day and why I knew I had to do this stream soon. While I'm watching Gravitas, I'm just seeing a huge disconnect between the way the India-based media is reporting this story compared to Western nations, whether it's BBC America, whether it's MSNBC or Fox or whoever. The way the commentators are just immediately going like, yes, America must immediately stand behind Ukraine and go to war with the Russians and support this war effort everywhere and send our soldiers over there. I mean, really getting behind it when they're conservative. And then having guys, but don't you think it's a little bit suspect that you have groups that are historically allegedly anti-war or are very reserved about going to war? Allegedly, that's supposed to be the liberals and the Democrats, right? Yeah. So you see the difference between like that perspective and like India. So yeah, True Seeker here just said that India doesn't support sanctions. There you go. And so, why would that be? Well, Modi has kind of a relationship that kind of balances interests with a lot of the different groups. I wouldn't say that I think Modi's actually taking probably one of the smartest positions because Modi has um, partnerships with Russia that are defense related, buying weapons and whatnot and other things like that. I believe. And I think there's some energy contracts and everything. So I mean, India just knows that look, it affords them the ability to think in the interests of Russia because they're mutually connected that way. All I've ever thought in my mind is that rather than like fight the Russians in this whole influence battle of saying like, we must have, Western nations in control of all this. Maybe what we just need to do is acknowledge as a country and as the West that we have to balance our perspective against that of the Russians. And maybe that's what's going to come from this conflict is that we'll see an exposure of the way that the media cycle is operating all of our psychology, you'll probably find out that Zelensky really is an actor, as much an actor as you would attribute to any of the joke politicians that you see here in America. So if you support the Ukrainians, I say, look, I'm with you that way. Okay. Those of you who think this is like some pro Russia thing, no, no, no. I'm just saying, like, put this all in context, knowing what you know about America. And you can apply quite a these factors to the Ukraine, especially if you know that Joe Biden has had this doorway in between, the energy interests out there and everything else like that relative to, um, yeah, yeah, Zelensky's had this whole thing going on with the same energy interests in the acting communities, guys. I mean, you'll find that these actors almost always, and if you watch my material historically, you're going to know what I'm talking about. The actors, the acting communities in Hollywood, there's this connection between them and energy interests. Okay. Then the other thing I wanted to highlight, so you have 11 nuclear reactors in that area, if I'm not mistaken. And I started noticing that the mainstream media here had a whole different way of reporting what was going on relative to the Indian media. So India would actually put the statements from those running the nuclear plants on their channel. They would actually show, one of the Ukrainian nuclear officials sitting there at the camera being interviewed and saying, being translated to English that yes, we did experience. Now, again, if you watch mainstream media in America, they're going to say that the Russians were there trying to invade nuclear stations and bombing. Like, this is a completely insane, like, perspective to take. There's a shared border there, guys. Like, if you think the Russians are just going to come in bombing it with shells and everything like that, don't you get that that's a big reason why they would want, whether you believe it's justified or not, don't you think that if there's this much of a disconnect between them and the Ukraine has this many corrupt puppet politicians with World Bank interests that want to see Russia fail and are stacking up on their border and have 11 nuclear reactors that they can do anything with, to be like, well, maybe we can make that leak, or maybe we can make this one have a problem that's a little bit closer to your border. Again, you would think that nobody would do something like that, guys. But again, remember, the Clintons, okay, especially, are always beating this war drum. They always want this to go on. And Hillary, if you look at the Twitter, was literally calling for a cyber war with Russia. Hillary Clinton openly calls for cyber warfare against Russia. Okay, guys, ladies and gentlemen, that is insane. That is completely insane. And I would just appeal to anybody that's over there to say that the Clintons are not the United States. The vast majority of people here in America, please listen to this. We all know that she's full of crap. We all know that this person and this organization, the vast majority of us have figured this out. We're not split 50-50 on this. Even a lot of people that are Dems have kind of said, like, I can't deal with this person. But look, they're the most powerful that takes this quote left wing position, but even those people are just bailing left and right now that they've learned it. These people are they're opportunists. They're very heavily connected to Hollywood. They're very heavily connected to the nuclear industry. I mean, Hillary Rodham, nuclear rods, uranium rods. Yes, I get it's her name, but you guys got to know these things are always more than one meaning. Not going to go there excessively today, okay? Yeah. Yes, Lisa, and yes, don't let me forget too, you're getting into the whole multilateral corporations. Yeah, if people are actually displaced, and there you go. Yeah, the displacement of people benefits the Clinton Global Initiative. You see them doing it over and over again through their policies. They will do something reckless through their policies that creates an enormous amount of displacement of the refugees. Then they conveniently offer to go over there and save them, bring them here, etc. Right? But then those people are taken advantage of for various means, or they're recruited. And once they're recruited, now you have the whole ecosystem of fake names, fake records, people that can have their old records expunged, whitewashed, brought into America, and put back out on the streets as the new and in some cases, guys, your new CIA, your new FBI, or the new, like, entry level agents that are recruited just because of they have so many skills globally to deal with all these issues. No, they're going to flood and populate your law enforcement agencies with people that they know to be criminals. They're going to begin to try to bring them in, as many of them, into this country from these other places that share this system of making things up, creating chaos, and always conveniently being there to swoop in with a solution that only benefits them and kind of harvests the rest of us for our resources, our our bodies, our whatever, our perceptions, even just for support for their causes. That's trippy. I didn't know that she had hit her name, Lisa, until after they won the election. Yeah. Yeah, so True Seeker says China would crush us in a cyber war. Okay, so again, remember, guys, Hillary. That's why you notice, like, the Clintons will kind of court China's favor. Actually, I found a clip, and I wish I could reference it to you now. I cannot find it. I found it on somebody else's channel, and they pulled it from a Rachel Maddow interview with Hillary Clinton, where she basically says, "Well, the Republicans are always cozying up with the Russians and everything like that. What's to stop us from having more close partnerships and alliances with China?" Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with that. Okay. And again, guys, I have no problems with the Chinese people. And if their system of governance is communism, that's their business. I'm not the kind of person that feels like we should go around changing the world. Okay. But I also don't want our model of governance changed over to something that's more like China. That's all. We can all get along, and everybody can be their own nations and have their own governance and deal with things the way that fits their cultures. But that would not be a good fit for our culture. And trying to aggressively do things to make us that way and force us into believing that way is, I think, is just going to be wickedly ineffective here. It'll have a limited. You can bend perceptions a little bit just by doing things aggressively the way that they have been, putting it out in the media cycle, normalizing ridiculousness. A lot of the things they're doing with the gender identities and social justice issues, all of it. But yeah, but here's what I will say, guys, is I think that they want that what this is designed to do is just create more of a fervor against Russia so that they can get the support for this US China alliance that they're really not going to get. And it's something that only the elites like the Clintons are really kind of in the Soroses. They'll pretend that they see China as a legitimate, quote, threat to the world economy or anything like that, but it's just not that way, guys. They're getting their technology support, they're getting their infrastructure support, they're getting their all of it's coming from China, and that's how they're able to achieve the takeover of perceptions here in America. They get their technical support from China. They get their resources from China. And that's why I personally believe that's why our culture has become so ridiculous, because clearly there is a culture that is like trying to change us to 180 degrees from what ours is. And the origins of what makes the artificial intelligence possible does not appear to be something that originates from the United States. I also don't think it's originating from Russia. I think this AI, it it nearly has like an occulted form of energy and perception manipulation that I think the Chinese culture, and honestly India and Russia, they all understand this intrinsically. We are clueless here in America. This channel and some of the other channels are some of the only places that discuss psychoenergetics, bioenergetics, the plasma field, the media cycle, and how it influences cultures through mass resonance manipulation. Like, almost nobody discusses these topics like intelligently or in a way that you can understand. But this channel does. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying that this is when I became really, really aware of that 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 the countries that understand this, Western nations will try to paint them as like being like, like, well, they're going after journalists, when in some cases they're really not. They might have been taking down mockingbird journalists like we have in America, where their stories aren't really even stories. They're literally just making things up. The stories are covers for trafficking code. They are. And the system that was over in Russia, involving a lot of the Rothschilds banks, a lot of the World Bank, IMF, WEF interests, They were thrown out of Russia. There was a huge reformation done there, and Putin was a large part of it, guys. Now, again, I'm not Mr. Pro Putin and pro Russia and everything else like that. I understand their perspective better than the average people because I took the time to. And I even understand China's perspective on a lot of things, guys. Like, I would even say that a lot of the things that they do in defense of themselves or they've done back to the United States in order to gain this influence isn't entirely unjustified. The CIA has been attacking all these different cultures aggressively and performing these disinformation operations. They could very well be assisting with this whole thing in Ukraine if you really dig deep into what's going on. Yeah, it all has the signature signs of CIA involvement, the use of crisis actors to change everybody's perceptions about who's really causing the problems, guys. I mean, do you understand there could be an element in Ukraine that's actually shelling their own buildings? Understand that when Hitler burned the right, burn the, what is it? Oh my God, why am I forgetting the name of it? With the Reichstag? Is it? No. Why am I cannot believe I forgot the name of the building, but he burned down that building to create the justification to get people to go against the wrong people. Okay, then when Hitler, rather when Hitler did that, it was with intention. When the Nazis did that, it was with intention. Okay, now Ukraine, guys, and nobody. This has been so convoluted in the press because they know people like me understand this, and they know the Russians will try to make this point. So Ukraine has a lot of that leftover Nazi element, just like the United States has tons and tons of those Operation Paperclip Nazi scientists and their families and their grandkids are having kids now that maintained the Nazi value system. They're in the media cycle, they're in intelligence services, they're in very heavily connected to people like this. And theirs is a Nazi agenda. The Nazis never let go of World War II. They never let go of the Third Reich. And Russia is enemy number one to the Nazis. Okay? Yeah. So, yeah, great comments, everybody. I do appreciate it. Um, but I just wanted to put that out there because, like, guys, like, how, like, in America, a lot of people are unaware that we have, like, statues of von Braun and that von Braun is a Nazi SS scientist. We have the von Braun Astronomical Society, the von Braun Memorial Stadium, memorial, like, buildings and societies named after a Nazi SS import from Germany after World War II just because of what he did for our rocket technology, completely whitewashing the fact that the guy was a genuine Nazi SS. Okay. And with that in mind, hang on, guys, I need a little coffee. What's going on the border? You can draw a lot of parallels to the way the media cycle and disinformation and reversal of perceptions is used on the Ukraine conflict as much as you can here in the United States. So, whatever position you take, and again, I don't have a rigid one here, guys. I don't really know. I just know that you have to dig past the layers of what the media is telling you on this one specifically if you feel compelled to hold a very strong position on it. See, there's another way to look at this, guys. And so you can see here, what I put down in my Twitter post was when the global elite and power players like Soros and Clinton Foundation line up to support anything, there must be a piece of the narrative missing. With Ukraine, nearly everyone is buying the MSM NATO narrative. Dig deeper before deciding what you think. This one is complicated. And so think about it, guys. Like, can you really trust anything Soros says? Now, look at this. Look at this. This thing he's doing here. I have witnessed Ukraine transform from a collapsing part of the Soviet Union to a liberal democracy and an open society. It has faced countless acts of Russian aggression, but has persisted. Uh huh. Says the guy that's banned from his home country. Says the guy that actually, when he was a young Jewish man, raided other Jews with his uncle and admitted to this on 60 Minutes. This is a guy that kind of hates his own people and then runs around telling everybody that he's fighting issues that he's actually helped the Nazis benefit from. So, can you trust anything that Soros says? Can you trust anything the Clintons say, regardless of your politics, guys? No. These are people that are known pretty much all across the world now to be opportunists. They create financial instability. Soros controls so many financial markets and he can destabilize currencies just through a few actions. And he's ruthless about it and he doesn't apologize. He says, well, that should be illegal, but it's not. So, of course I'm going to do it as a businessman. He's got, they asked him, Steve Croft asked him, like, didn't that cause any internal conflict when you were like, raiding the homes of other Jews with your uncle? And he's like this, not at all. It's just the nature of how things. I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing here. It's the nature of the way things work. If we hadn't been the ones doing it, it would have been somebody else. But he's smiling. I mean, he actually kind of has like this, like, yeah, why not? If it wasn't us, it'd be somebody else. It's like, wow, whoa. Then you have to almost like review, what do you really know about World War II? What do you really know about the Nazis? And what do you know about the surviving Nazis, the surviving bloodlines, and how that affects this whole thing that's going on right now? Not trying to get excessively into that topic, guys, but if you don't review history, if you don't understand that they have a similar thing going on in Ukraine where there's this hidden love of Nazism that maybe the whole population, just like here in America, like, I mean, those of you who join this channel, you kind of know about the von Braun thing, but ask yourself, do any of your neighbors get it? So how easy is it to like conceal the interests of Nazis and paperclip scientists and all of their bloodlines here in America, let alone the Ukraine, where you don't even understand the language, you're having to interpret everything through somebody else's cultural lens, you know? You can't know. And I'm not going to pretend to know better than you. I'm telling you what I try to do is expose myself to different information. So yeah, I see what all the power players in America and Europe are doing. We see what Soros and Hillary Clinton's doing. Fine, okay. So we know that if they're beating the war drum and this isn't even really their value system, then there's something deeper going on, right? So he says, brave Ukrainians are now on the front line and risking their lives in an onslaught that reminds me of the siege of Budapest in 1944. I mean, this is a guy that, I mean, think about what he just said. Budapest is in Hungary. Hungary has banned George Soros. Yes, that conflict that I personally helped raid all the other Jews in? This reminds me of that thing. It was very bad. Yeah, way to go, George. Yeah, remember like when you were raiding Jews' homes with your uncle, pretending to be a Nazi? Well, I guess if you're pretending to be one, what's the difference between being one? I mean, think about it. This is effectively a guy that when he was young was being trained to be a Nazi, and now he's lecturing all of us? Oh, yeah, Hungary's away. You got that, Lisa. Welcome, Fred. Um, so he put it's important that both the transatlantic alliance, but also other nations do whatever is in their power to support Ukraine in this time of existential threat. Now, think about it, guys. What he just said is going to make him millions, if not billions of dollars off of his investments, And again, I'm not saying it's done for greed. This is done for power. So why is it so important for people that are very close to the banking system, that are very close to the World Economic, the WEF, IMF, the World Bank, Bilderberg? Why do all the power players connected to that want this to happen so badly? Because I here's what I think, guys. They're simply trying to reduce Russian influence, and by doing so, they're actually making global world peace more difficult. By trying to create this impression of that it's big bad Russia trying to create a second Cold War, they're just simply trying to make a society where they don't have to share in any of the power, where they don't have to where people don't have to actually have a balance of their interests. And that's impossible to achieve. You can only do it through perception, but it's simply not the reality. The reality is that until we can generate the same kind of energy, until we have the might to actually fight this or that the way that we claim to, that this is a losing fight for America to get involved excessively in this. And Biden knows that. But here's the problem, guys. You've already seen that this president is letting the ship sink. So don't you think this is part two of it? And in letting the ship sink, what'll happen next, if they succeed in doing that, now you're in an all-out, the new Cold War, guys. The new Cold War, they know better than to drop nuclear bombs because, again, remember I told you about the ionosphere? I don't care what's going on. No one's that stupid. No one wants to ensure mutual destruction. So it's going to be cyber warfare. Are you going to win in a cyber warfare fight? Will you win as the American population? How good are you at defeating Russian hackers or Chinese hackers or American hackers that blame Russians and Chinese to stoke a war with those countries? That's what Hillary Clinton is actually calling for. A future where you don't know when the power is going to be on. You don't know when you're going to be ordering food from a restaurant using your online app. You're not sure if you're going to get paid electronically now that we've all committed fully to an electronic economy involving electronic transactions, involving banks controlled by who, involving people that speak to the banks for an hour and get paid 750 grand sometimes. Oh, wait, no, wait. That wasn't, no. The Clintons, they didn't get paid $750,000 for talking to a bank. They got $750,000 for talking to Ericsson, a global telecommunications infrastructure provider where you can't even make a cell phone call anywhere in the world without it going through an Ericsson base station. You might actually have both calls processed through a Nokia base station. That's possible, but I would doubt that would ever happen. I think that 90% of the time it's going to be either a combination of Ericsson and Nokia, just Ericsson for the most part, at least in America. You're almost never going to, on any major network provider, none of them are, not the major companies, are not using the Chinese technology. I've worked there, okay? I was on a contract with Sprint, and I know that they use Samsung, but that's Korean, and they're aligned with Western interests, and they're not really a threat when it comes to like define Western interests and things like that for the most part. But otherwise, when it comes to your telecommunications interests, guys, I mean, you're trusting, Sweden and Ericsson, and you're trusting Finland with Nokia for global infrastructure as far as making cell phone calls. And so in a global cyber war, it's important to know where these multinational corporations are aligning, because do you guys understand like what these groups can make happen and how they can structure our reality to say that, things that they themselves could potentially do? And look, guys, we're dealing with some companies here that have had corrupt CEOs. Ericsson had a corrupt CEO they had to fire. They had at least about a dozen allegations of bribery, extortion, and blackmail in various countries, guys, all over the world. I don't care if it's the US, Greece, China, globally. Okay. Thanks for joining, Lisa. Appreciate that. But everywhere. And the best thing I can tell you is we won't know exactly where these things come from if they start to happen. And the media cycle is going to be very quick to get you, just like they have been. I think before you guys, right now, they're trying to make it to where if somebody else points out Russiagate, it'll seem irrelevant and you'll immediately say it must be, quote, Russia. But you have to look deeper than that, guys, especially because the vast majority of these things are done internally. I want to remind you, Enron did not come from China. Enron did not come from any of these foreign countries or Russia. Enron was an American energy company that did things to destabilize America for their own greed and their own interests. Okay. There are Americans that controlled Enron that had those high level CIA type connections, the ability to fictionalize CEOs, make us all believe that it was these certain people that did it. Watch Enron, the smartest guys in the room. Okay. Watch that documentary. The documentary and the story itself is a structured reality that we are all told to believe. But the events that happen in Enron are very real. They rigged everything. Everything became a synthetic reality within finance, within telecommunications, and within energy. They rigged all of it. And that system rigging, after they took down Enron, they just made it normal now. They made Enron seem like the big, and it was a very bad company. They even controlled Portland General Electric. So those of you who are Portlanders in Oregon, you'll kind of understand like what happened there even more. If you're an employee of Portland General Electric, like a lifetime journeyman electrician or whatever you say they are, right? That was doing all that work, and you put your money in a 401k or a pension that had company stock in it, you pretty much were bankrupted as far as everything you'd put in for, like, like all of that money was basically washed away. You went down to pennies on the dollar of value if you were lucky. I want you to think about what they did to all those workers and everything like that. Just the good Americans that go to show up and do their job and protect the infrastructure, design the infrastructure, support the infrastructure. They all got screwed too. And these people are here in America. So we have to start asking ourselves, guys, when this type of effery happens here in America, where they shut down energy grids, watch Enron, the smartest guys in the room. You'll know what I'm talking about. They have recordings when they were surveillancing these guys of them saying like, looks like Granny's going to have to, roast in that or have a heat stroke out there because her power's going down. Yeah, well, dumb B should have moved out of California. Too bad for her. We're going to make some money. Shut it down. I mean, they understand. They understand what they're doing to make money will cost lives. And they laugh about it. When they submit documents, they sign them M-Yas. My ass. They had a bunch of their companies named after, they were ciphers for Star Wars characters, Chewbacca Enterprises and Skywalker, and but all done in really cleverly concealed ways. That's Enron. Guys, that's energy interests. That's the way they do you. It's Hollywood. It's a fiction, but its consequences are real. They were shutting down parts of America. We just said like, well, that was a dirty energy company. We just didn't dig deeper. And this lack of sophistication we have here in America is just costing us our global reputation. I mean, we have to be smarter. All of us have to be smarter, myself included. We have to be more sophisticated with how we process information in this country. We cannot just keep buying this bullshit. We have to be smarter. We have to be better. I know that's difficult to do, guys, when it comes to, like when it's been happening to you, when it's been operating all of our collective subconscious for so long, how do you break the spell? And I guess it doesn't always happen quickly in every group or whatever in every society all at once. But I would say, right now, before you get angry, before you get upset about a position or something like that, or you let some footage bother you, I need you to also understand, guys, quite a bit of this footage that's coming out is completely fake. I see things coming out on Twitter over and over again where they go, this reporter was died while reporting in Ukraine. God bless them. And it's the same photo used of a person they said it happened to in Afghanistan, playing the same ways of working your heartstrings to go like, oh my God, a journalist was over there just trying to figure out the truth and he died. No, a crisis actor, paper fiction that was CGI also, which is computer generated imagery, was deleted from the database and they made you believe a real human died. And every now and then they like to recycle a character when they think you're not paying attention. Why they think some people aren't going to figure it out by now, I don't know. But think about what happens when you discover something like that. Say you discover that CNN has reported 2 times that the same guy died as a reporter in Afghanistan years ago while bravely reporting, also just died recently in Ukraine while bravely reporting. Or was that something the opposition did to seed that story to make you retweet it and then you look stupid when you've retweeted it? You see how many layers there are now to make you like jump to a reaction, immediately go like, okay, I gotta retweet that. I'm mad about that. Don't get that way. That's all. Look, you be who you need to be, I guess. Look, I don't want to say this or that, but think about it a little bit more. I that's one of the reasons why I've been kind of staying off Twitter and the other things is I wanted to understand this better and get exposed to more information. On that note, one of the only people I see even talking about these things is Anya Parampil. Sorry if I said that wrong. But she posted Ukrainian sovereignty ended in 2014 when the U.S. overthrew its democratically elected leader in an illegal coup and installed a puppet government. And by the way, guys, what she's talking about, you can see footage of Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and Amy Klobuchar, a notoriously liberal, uber liberal, okay, from the Democratic Farmers Labor Party. That's Minnesota DFL. That's where you get like Ilhan Omar and Keith Ellison. I mean, these are like uber liberal, way left position, pro Antifa type people, side by side with Lindsey Graham and John McCain back in 2014, giving full support to the Ukrainian army, committing to U.S. support, U.S. resources, and U.S. soldiers, all of it. All of these people on both sides of this defense committee over there talking directly to the Ukrainian army. I've aired some of that footage here. I don't have the clip available right now. Otherwise, I'd show it to you again. But think about that. Think about how long this has been going on. And most people, I think, in America just now caught wind of it. Did you even know that footage existed? Because if you don't, if you have not exposed yourself to that clip of those politicians promising that back several years ago during that conflict, like she's talking about, if you haven't figured that one out yet, if you haven't dug any deeper into, well, hang on, let me read this. But it put at least 13,000 people have died in fighting since then in a war fueled by U.S. weapons and neo-Nazi militias. Do you get it yet? Those are the same people that lost in World War II that have been stacking up by the border saying like, "Nuh-uh, this ain't over." Just like in America, we had a whole bunch of people here that were Nazis and sympathetic to Nazis that said, "Oh, hell no, this ain't over. Let's bring them over here and have them just do what they did there from the ground up." And now we have this core group in America that most people are clueless to that are operating on a Nazi agenda. It is a Nazi sympathetic agenda, and they are integrated everywhere, especially on the left, you guys. But they're always going to tell you that it's this patriotic, uber conservative position. And this is the fallacy. Most people just don't get this now. Okay. You might have considered a person like Anya Parampil a progressive or liberal reporter at one time, but I don't look at her that way or any of these other people. Like, if they're doing good reporting, I'm not going to take that perspective. In this case, I see her being one of the only people that offers you a different perspective on it. It says Putin initiated the beginning of the end of a war that started with the 2014 US coup in Ukraine. In fact, it's the end of NATO's 30-year effort to endlessly expand and threaten Russia since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Keeping in mind, NATO's mission was collapsing the Soviet Union and the spread of communism. So, what's happening today, folks? They're using it as the premise and then doing the opposite. It's the law of reversal. It is changing your perception of actual events. Right? Yeah. And that's all I'm saying, folks, is like, so when you juxtapose what she says there, it was a US led coup with US weapons that used neo Nazis against the Russians. And the Russians, if you ever follow Russian media or the Russian like Twitter feeds and everything, pretty regularly, I'd say several times a year, and they have a day that they have like called Victory Day. They talk about that conflict with the Nazis and like their defeat of the Nazis in that winter and what it means to them and their culture. It's like a big deal. So when you look at what NATO is, it's really almost like the Nazis pretending that they're just this national alliance that's there to spread the whatever communism. When communism was, at least from the Soviet Union, was defeated. Do you know this, folks? This audience does, but do most people even know? Russia, I mean, guys, this is how weird the West is, and America especially. Like, a lot of people are just freaking clueless that it's not the Soviet Union. I mean, yeah, I know most people know that, but that means like Russia is not a communist nation. And if you listen to Putin's own words and some of his own statements, whether it's with American media or otherwise, he even says, like, no, we're not a communist society. We ended that. What Putin actually did was take out a lot of the World Bank and Rothschild bank interests and things like that. The corruption, the core corruption, where when you get these elements inside your society, they can just, through the fake monetary system and money rigging, can basically create circumstances that make them winners every single time and the rest of society losers. It's kicking those people out of that country to where they don't have an edge. And they all go like, man, those Russians, well, we'll get back at them. And they work in all these committees globally to change all of our perception about Russian culture and to make them seem like they're these people that are in the dark ages, still embracing communism and all this other crap. Guys, think about how ridiculous that is when we have groups here in America that are doing the People's Army of and all this other. I mean, guys, communism is being embraced here. So when you see Putin saying, like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, like, we abandoned that a long time ago. But I see that you in the West seem to be embracing communism and socialism quite a bit. Is that wrong? Is that a wrong perspective? When you see so many people in America doing the People's Army of I mean, being openly pro-socialist and pro-communist, not even hiding it at all, and saying that that's their intention, is to change us, basically change the foundation of what makes us a country over to something else that would make us more in alliance with who? China. Guys, that only benefits China. That's their governance. So people here that are saying pro war, pro war, pro war, but you also see them doing things that support Antifa and BLM, always putting up the signs, always saying that they're there for Ukraine. You really got to look at these. Okay. And again, people are free to have their opinion. If they're just repeating something, I'm not talking about the average person who doesn't get it. I'm talking about the ones that have these multi-platituded, or whatever you want to call them, like positions that all link to ways that, like, they don't really synchronize with each other. If you're liberal, you should not want more war. You should not want to, you should always be reserved about even sending our troops over to help NATO, right? So we've seen a total reversal of these things to make us believe that there's something different than they really are. And I'm just putting that out as an appeal to folks a little bit to say, right now, especially, please give it more consideration. All right. With that, folks, I'm going to stay on for a little while longer. Hang on, I got to shut that down. I'm going to stay on just a little bit longer and talk about some things that are not related to this issue, because, the channel basically has been not very active, and there's a couple reasons for that. And I'll get to talk about that in a second here, but just reading some of your comments, True Seeker says, China has the same economy model as the Nazis. They have different currencies for domestic and international trade. Yeah. Again, True Seeker, like, if you saw some of my earlier material, like I was saying that, I mean, there seems to be a union of sorts, or a mutually shared agreement between paperclip Nazi bloodlines in America and some of the high-ranking members of Chinese intelligence that are pro-communist, because they have an agenda that fits one another's agendas. Again, people at that high level in China don't want to see America succeed in any ways that aren't controllable by China, the same way that Western interests basically wanted to use their carrots and sticks of, World Bank influence and everything with the rest of the world. Well, we'll give you this if you do this. We'll give you this if you do this. But if you don't, they put the smack down. Oh, yeah. You know something, guys? Hang on. Wait. This is how I knew that Anya Parampil was onto something here, because look at this. A literal crisis actor calls for World War III. She called it, guys, I think. I honestly think she really called something here, like, accurately. So you see this guy now let's look up Zelensky really quick, because I mean, when you see how look how good this guy is at, like, working over the emotions, you know? Zelensky criticizes NATO for ruling a no-fly zone over his country. He's demanding more jets fly in and bomb and missile things from NATO. To blame on who? Russia. Okay, now look, guys, you have to look at what Zelensky's history is here. Why is my mouse disappearing? Okay, here it is. Zelensky is a Ukrainian politician, former actor, and comedian who is the sixth and current president of Ukraine. He grew up as a native Russian speaker. Let's see here. We keep going down here. Hang on. Yeah, as president, Zelensky has been a proponent of e-government and unity between the Ukrainian-speaking and Russian-speaking parts of the country's population. Guys, I mean, really, I'm not saying being an actor disqualifies you from being a good president or anything else like that, but just sort of like figure this out a little bit why some of these people are so good at working you over. In 2008, he starred in the feature film Love in the Big City and its sequel, Love in the Big City 2. Zelensky continued his movie career with the film Office Romance, Our Time in 2011, and with Rebetsky versus Napoleon in 2012. Love in the Big City 3 was released in January 2014. Zelensky also played the leading role in the 2012 film Eight First Dates. He loves these romantic comedy roles, I guess. So see, he's able to like he's a, better than average looking guy, can appeal to a lot of people on a world scale, get a lot of women to sort of go like, oh my god, he's so this and that. We must defend Ukrainians too. You see what I'm saying? This is so working your heartstrings, like it's just a movie that's there for us all to believe, you know? Yeah, so yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Look, we can have like debates about, democracy and socialism and everything else like that. That's cool. I mean, I don't have a rigid perspective on a lot of these things. I'm here in America. I care about America and Americans. And that's mostly because like when you're part of a culture, like, and then you become aware of the way information is spun so aggressively, and you kind of have insights into the roots of it. To me, I just see it as like, part of my personal responsibility and mission, I guess you could say, to just sort of like help at least unravel some of the layers. Because if it does nothing else, I think it just brings us into a greater state of where I think we'll get more progress done, just both internally within ourselves and with the rest of the world. When you can decrypt what these things are and to not let this idea slow you down, it's better. But I will say this, guys: given everything that's going on in the world right now, you should be prepared or be thinking at least a little bit more than average about what you would do in the event that you did not have immediate access to information. Do you know people's phone numbers, because you could have parts of the grid that could go down? And what I'm telling you is when that happens, if it does happen, I should say if it happens or when it happens, okay? Don't immediately think that you know exactly who to blame. And don't even be thinking about that, because that's not even productive. I would say just to have a game plan in place in the event that it does. Do you have enough gas in your car? Do you have a little bit extra in case you need it? Do you have a plan in place to call people? Do you have their phone numbers written down on paper, or do you only store them in a device that could actually experience a short circuit in an EMP attack? Do you have other options to make phone calls in the event of an EMP attack? Have we thought about more internally as a country what would happen if we had to bring an internet back online in certain pockets around the country? Where does the talent reside? Who are the people that can bring the internet back online? Who are the people that can bring services back online that are vital to our infrastructure? And how do you maintain good contacts with those people and ensure that they have the right resources and talents through which to have a plan in place in case something does happen? I can tell you that part of what I've been doing the last few weeks is learning more about how to set up a portable internet service provider, like to make a modular form of where you can basically set up paths and links and things like that to restore or link into an existing internet pipeline and bridge it out to a new one, to expand internet to an area that may have been impacted by some disaster like this. It's also the type of thing that you could do in any time, right? It's like if there's a place that's just lacking in internet connectivity, and you'd want to have that internet connection brought out there, like a rural community or something like that, where there's not a lot of local services or people can only get dishes and things like that. Learning about different ways to bring in links to different areas using my wireless experience and some partnerships. And so right now, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, focus more of my time on, both just for my personal interests as well as just having a greater awareness about if there is something catastrophic that happens, where are my gaps in knowledge on routing, switching, everything else like that, and how do I need to improve upon that in case something does happen. So no, not now, DW. But what I can just because it's such a complicated topic that there's really no one quick and easy way of doing it. But it's kind of like you would use things like wireless point-to-point microwave paths of unlicensed frequencies. And so, if anything ever does happen, I would say people that have like a community where you have some people that are communications experts, and you want to at least like say, okay, if something happens to our town, we should have a plan in place to restore a communication link and know what we're doing, and maybe have some basic equipment to get to achieve that with. And so again, that was just one of those things where once I learned that there was this type of, whatever, I wanted to be a bigger part of it and I wanted to learn more and expand my knowledge because I've been kind of staying away from a lot of technology things for a number of years since leaving my wireless career. But then I thought, I know so much about wireless things and how to restore things in an emergency that it would be a real shame if I lost, sharpening that tool, I guess you could say, and all that knowledge. And yeah, and without saying too much, I think like in the future, I would like to be like more involved with things that are going to be helping out solving these types of problems, whether it be for the internet things or wireless security or wired security, things of that nature. It just seems like this is where things are going right now, where with people's needs is not trusting something external excessively to take a little bit ownership over the information paths that come into your community, and to have some game in place if there is ever something that happened. And I feel like I'm privileged in being one of those few people that could do that and would be a part of a group that would be as close to it. And I would say that should be an incentive for you to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you definitely want to be in the place where people have the most access to the most information. The ability to get the information flow going again will be like its own form of currency if we ever had a disaster, which is quite realistic, you guys. I mean, yes, mesh networks. Yeah, True Seekers. He knows what I'm talking about. Just ways of connecting, like point to point links. There's a lot of things that involve, like, unlicensed microwaves. Depends on the country that you're in, where you basically take one dish, point it from here to here, where areas that have line of sight. You bring in a link into a tower, send that link from the tower down to a neighborhood where it brings in the link on a certain gigahertz path. And then that path gets put into some routers and switching equipments, and then it gets distributed over either wired or wireless internet, whatever the preference of you or your community would be, that kind of thing. And it's something that you could do just in regular times or in a disaster, I imagine. But I'm just trying to learn about it. Yeah, when I have a little bit more to share. As for now though, like I'm just like I'm kind of in a like an initial phase or whatever like that. So and with the channel, guys, that's kind of what it's been. It's like I needed a little bit of time to like sharpen my skills a little bit on a few things and learn some new skills, and so I can get something like this going in the event that I can. And and I would also like to do some consulting in regards to that too, folks. So I'll be prepared actually to like actually if you have a situation that you would want to have that done in, I think I'll be prepared to like actually provide guidance because like what you're asking me, it's so multifaceted and things like that that you would almost want to have a person that's a consultant that's helping you with it to say, okay, tell me what your unique situation is, and then I can tell you like here's some vendors that you can use. Here's some of the types of ways you can do it. Here's some of the expenses involved, that type of thing. And then there would just be places where you could go to buy the hardware and then have it installed, and then there's things you can do yourself, but there's other parts you would definitely want to have help with, especially when it comes to like doing licensing and things like that, because it is pretty challenging. But, or, if you're using unlicensed bands or whatever, that what you're doing, that you don't, choose the wrong products or anything else like that. But again, guys, I'm not going to pretend or whatever. But I've definitely learned a lot, and I have a lot of previous engineering experience through which to do this. But you always have to sharpen your tools a little bit to figure it out now. But on that note, guys, that's really why the channel's been a little bit whatever. But I'm going to be creating probably at least one or two more channels that are going to cover some of these topics that you're talking about. Like I'll get into what you just said, as a way to like expand some of the knowledge, but it'll just be on a different channel. I don't want to like clutter this channel excessively with another channel's concepts, but I do want to like you as my audience. Yeah, if I start doing that material about these things involving more the internet concepts, I'll bring it into here and I'll say, okay, here's the channel you subscribe to for that type of material. And that'll be handled in a completely separate environment, mostly just because this is for more people that have followed my research and things like that for a long time. And, are it's more for people that are regular. This is a channel that's kind of hard to jump into. I mean, people are always welcome to, but it's one that you kind of have to keep up with, almost like it's a TV series of sorts to sort of get. But yeah, True Seeker, Raspberry Pi, great, exactly. So again, that is part of everything. Learning Ubuntu, Raspberry Pi, and Linux type things to do all these types of functionalities. That's definitely a good idea, folks. I would definitely recommend if you don't know Linux to learn it, or some basic Linux commands. Just teach yourself things, guys. What'll happen if you have no Microsoft? What'll happen if you have no Apple? What happens if a bunch of servers go down? You're going to have to rely upon things that are more basic and shell, or Raspberry Pi type or oriented concepts that you can assemble on some cheap parts. You can assemble Linux machines on spare leftover things. Linux can run on next to nothing and give you a pretty good user experience. I've actually used it. So yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, folks, I would say anytime you're in a place like that, like think about what I just told you and create a plan for yourselves, create a plan for your community. And then, when I'm in a better place to more prepared for it, I'll be able to do more guidance on things like that, and maybe even be available as a more serious consultant and contractor on things on a larger scale for that. On that note, folks, I'm going to sign off on this one for today. If you can and you'd like to, contribution details are in the description below. I just went through a relocation. I need to get some extra hardware to do more tests. You're going to get a lot more energetics material, and I'm going to be back to doing like the helionosis measurements on the trees. I've already done some footage and I've already done some measurements, and I'm going to be sharing that with you soon. But I want to do this one because we have a lot of things going on with the world right now. We've been kind of turmoil. So, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, I do appreciate you joining, and thank you very much. And yeah, I'll be seeing you soon, guys. It won't be as long to the next stream. Have a good day.